Sorry, I'm at football practice. Summer of the Mariposas, Chapter 17. The Canoe. Lupe, Lupita, give me my little Pita a ride in your little boat. The marshy lake stretched far and wide before us, was covered in a misty haze. The sky above me was a deep purple gray, and on the horizon I could see the first rays of light pushing through, announcing a new day. Where are we? Velia and Delia asked in unison. Not where Not where, but when, Juanita said. As we wandered along the shallow shore, the mist dissipated, exposing an entire community of canoes being steered by both men and women on the surface of the lake. Fishermen stood on their bobbing vessels, throwing nets across the dark, still waters. Native Mexican women dressed in pale tunics slid their paddles into the lake and rowed slowly, serenely across the water toward what could only be described as densely vegetated islands floating on the water. And as the sun rays peeked out of the horizon, turning the sky into an amethyst haze, the canoe people sang in a language I've never heard before. Their songs were filled with pleasure and warmth and life. What time is it? Juanita asked. It looks like the sun wants to come out, but it can't. Abuelita looked at the watch on her wrist, tapped it, put it up to her ear, and shook her head. I can't tell. This old thing stopped ticking. Now what? Velia asked. I don't know, I said. Since we met La Llorona, I never know what to expect. I was wondering what we were supposed to do when a young woman paddled her canoe to shore and docked it right in front of us. You wish to go across? She asked. Across? I asked, looking at her canoe closely. It was not large, but it was big enough to carry all of us together if we chose to go aboard. To the other side, to your worlds, she said, smiling. The Great Mother has ordered it so. She has sent me here to help you. I am to take you back to your mother and your abuelita to Hacienda Dorado. Yes, Juanita said, yes, we all have to get home. The beautiful woman moved a bouquet of calla lilies out of the way and placed beautiful woman moved a bouquet of calla lilies out of the way and placed it over a basket full of fresh tomatoes, squash, and chilies to make room for us. We all scrambled onto the small vessel. Then we watched as she anchored her paddle against the murky lake's floor and pushed the little boat away from the shore. My name is Ixtali, the beautiful woman said as she rowed us out toward the middle of the quiet lake. The sky above us was blushing with the promise of sunrise. My eyes had adjusted to the meager light, and I could see details now. The men wore white tunics and pants that stopped at their ankles. With no shoes, the women wore tunics too, the length of dresses, but their hair was braided intricately and adorned with flowers and little stones I did not recognize. We are the Garza girls, and this is our Abuelita Remedios, Juanita said, pointing to the rest of us. Ixtali, can you tell us where we are? Why are we traveling back in time? You are not traveling back in time, Ixtali said. You are moving forward, gliding across Texcoco Lake, where your mother's people made their home. I looked at the islands of vegetation fenced in within the clusters of willow trees, creating the illusion of heavily forested swampland. I've never seen so many little islands in a lake, I said. They are chinampas, the floating gardens that feed us. They provide us with everything we need to sustain our families. They are our livelihood. We are tenders, cultivators, nurturers, but this is more than a way to survive for us. It's our way of life. I reached out and touched the end of the muddy wooden stick, a digging tool of some kind, sitting next to a small wooden hoe beside me on the boat. So you're a farmer? I asked. Yes, Ixtali said, rowing softly, carefully as she watched the other boats around us, making sure we were not in their way. But I also harvest flowers, fragrant blooms to decorate the palaces, the houses of the nobles on the mainland. She lifted her paddle and used it to point to the left of us. I followed the gesture and gasped at the sight of a beautiful city that seemed to be floating in the middle of the lake, encircled by a magical mist bedazzling us with its towering splendor. Complex clusters of stone buildings so tall and imposing they looked like gods rising out of the water reached for the sky. Tenochtitlan, Abuelita said, looking in wonder at the great city looming over the swampy lake. The Aztecs decided to build it here on the lake when they saw the sign. An eagle sitting on a cactus eating a snake. It was the center of a great empire, the home of our ancestors. I watched Ixtali row and row, taking us away from the city. Why are we so far away from home? I asked. This is the goddess's gift to you, she said, a vision to always remember who you are, where you came from, as you develop a better future. Is Ixtali rode on? we passed a fisherman pulling up a turtle in his net and 2 women picking fresh vegetables from a floating garden. It's beautiful, your way of life. Thank you for showing it to us, and for giving us a ride, Peta said, inching closer to me. I put my arm around her and pulled her in beside me. You are welcome, Ixtali said as she rowed away from the city and toward shore. It didn't even occur to me to wonder what language we were speaking. We just understood each other. We spent the next few minutes watching the fishermen pull up their nets in the subtle darkness before dawn. As I sat holding Peta close to me, listening to the soft songs of our ancestors working in the waters of Texcoco Lake, I wondered what time of day it would be when we woke up from this wondrous dream. A chilly breeze picked up around us, and I saw the rest of the mist lift off the water, exposing a familiar shoreline. Look, Juanita said, pointing to the land coming closer and closer. It looks just like our swimming hole. Delia and Delia jumped up to the boat with excitement. As they finished Juanita's thought, the canoe rocked severely, and before Abida could pull the twins down beside her, it capsized. We all fell overboard, landing in the waters of our very own Edie in the Rio Grande. We're home! Peta screamed as she tried to stand up in the water. Delia and Delia scrambled across the water to help her as Juanita, Abida, and I helped Ixtali drag her canoe to shore. Juanita helped our grandmother out of the water. I'm sorry about this, she told Ixtali, who was standing on the riverbank, wringing the water out of her dress. Oh, don't worry, Ixtali said, looking up from her dress. It'll dry out before I get home. Thank you, the twins kept chanting as they held Peta up between them, her arms wrapped around their shoulders for support. Thank you for the pleasant company, Ixtali said. We were barely over the Serra when we saw them to the right of us, in a clearing on yet another hill, hundreds of snout-nosed butterflies hovering over dozens of rose bushes. The rosebush clusters bloomed joyously, their blushing white crowns illuminating the darkness we had endured for so long. The joy of finding the roses was short-lived as I realized all our belongings were still in Abelida's truck, sitting in front of the Centuria de Nuestra Senora de Guadalupe, right where we'd left it before we were transported here. I don't have anything to cut them with, I said. Oh, I do, Velia said, reaching into her pocket and unfolding a blade out of a complicated gadget that looked like 20 tiny tools in one. She handed me the small contraption. Here you go. Can I come? I can hold them for you. Okay, I looked at the others and smiled. This won't take long, I promise. Juanita took me by the shoulders, pointed me toward the hill, and gave me a tiny push to get me going. Go on. We'll wait here. Peta needs to rest, she said. Velia and I walked all the way up the hill, the bright morning light illuminating our steps as we trampled through the brush. When we got to the roses, we both gasped. Their pale complexions blushed with an iridescent splendor that made them look almost magical. Velia touched one of them, her eyes sparkling with admiration. They're beautiful. Yes, they are, I said. Come on, let's not waste time. Velia stood just behind me as I started to cut the roses. When I handed her the first one, she untucked her shirt and pulled it forward, creating a bed for the blossoms. I carefully pressed the thorns off their stems with my forefinger and thumb before laying them on the cradle of her shirt. Their wide leaves trembled delicately as they lay on top of one another. Velia folded her shirt over the 10 roses I had already given her. You almost done there? I pricked my finger on a thorn and winced at my pain. Aye! See what you made me do? Be patient, I'm almost through. I don't care if you take all day, but we don't have that kind of time, Velia continued. What do you mean? I asked, sucking on my throbbing thumb. She tapped my shoulder and pointed down the hill. I think our ride is here. I turned around and saw them coming too. 2 border patrol trucks rolling up the hill with their headlights full force on us. Oh, thank God, I said, relieved. Now we don't have to walk. Well, I wouldn't be so happy right now, or did you forget? Velia asked, turning to look at me with a furrowed brow. Forget what? I asked, annoyed. I wasn't sure what she was getting at. Hello? Velia retorted. We don't have our papers with us, and Peta is hurt. They're going to call CPS on us for sure. Sorry for my terrible reading at times. My mouth was not working correctly to get the words out.